Hi, and welcome to the Made of Dreams podcast. I am so happy you're here. If you're pursuing something in your life, following your dreams full-time, or when there's time, you're in the right place. On this show, we have conversations that inspire you to keep going, help you embrace where you are, and see a bit of others' creative process. A little wellness, a little woo-woo, and a lot of heart. So hi, I'm Ashley, songwriter, mom, hairstylist and wife, but more importantly, your new friend on a mission to create a space for all the people who have always just wanted more. More joy, more balance, and more creativity. So stick around and let's dream on. Today, I'm excited to welcome holistic career coach Marla Tseng back onto the show. Marla was one of my first guests and continues to be one of my most downloaded episodes. Since we last spoke, Marla has expanded her business and by adding human design. She combines the wisdom of astrology and human design into her coaching, and we are going to talk about it all today. She's even dug into a theme specifically for this show, and we're going to look at human design profiles by choosing some musicians that have inspired me and that hopefully you will be familiar with. So she went about researching each of their charts, which will help us see how the profiles come to life in personalities of people that we all might know and be familiar with. I think it's a really thoughtful and insightful way to learn about it. And I'm excited to welcome you back, Marla. Thanks for being here.
Ashley, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be back.
Yeah, it's been really fun. So like I mentioned, you were one of my first interviews, and because of that, I refined the show a little bit since we've last spoken. Now I have a couple getting to know you questions if you're game for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so my first question is, if you have to sing karaoke, what is your go-to song?
Oh my goodness. For some reason, Journey is coming to mind. What is that really popular song?
Like Don't Stop Believing? Is
Yes,
that
yes,
Journey?
Don't Stop
Okay.
Believing. Yes.
Yes.
That I actually have this image of that at a karaoke. Yes. So
That's
that
a good
comes to mind.
one.
It's a good
Yes.
one. It makes you feel really pumped up.
Yeah,
It gets the
totally.
crowd going.
Crowd pleaser. Yes. Okay. Coffee or tea?
Ooh,
Or both?
I like
Or neither?
both, probably more tea.
Tea.
Coffee is more, usually my boyfriend makes me coffee and I like his coffee. So I'll have tea on my own, but then he'll make me coffee.
Nice. Okay. Let's see. Do you remember the first concert you went to?
Oh my goodness. You know what's funny? I actually remember being really young and my parents taking me to see Tony Bennett when he came to San Antonio. So this is, later in his career, but we were in this theater, the Majestic, and which is beautiful, one of the older theaters in San Antonio. And at the very end, I believe he sang "Flying Me to the Moon" just a cappella without, it was
Wow.
just so beautiful. And his voice carried throughout the entire theater. And so I have that memory.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
really special. That's
Yeah,
cool.
that's great.
Okay, this is my last getting to know you question. What is your most used emoji?
It's just the happy face. I go to that
Yeah,
one a lot, the regular
classic.
happy face. Yeah.
That's-
Sometimes the one that's like blushing just a little, but I like the regular happy face.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about human design and your holistic career coaching. Last time you were here, we dove into astrology, and since then you've added this human design element. Do you want to tell me a bit about how you got interested in that and how you feel like it enhances what you do?
Yes. So astrology definitely was my first love, and I started doing that when I was back in middle school. But then in the past few years, I started hearing about human design, and I didn't know what it was. And the first time I saw a chart, it was really overwhelming, and I really didn't think that I would ever study it the way that I've studied astrology. But I kept hearing about how practical it was. And so I thought, I'm going to give this a shot. And so I started taking classes and I really just started really enjoying it. It does use astrology in part, but it also brings in other elements from older traditions like the I Ching, the chakras, the Kabbalah, and it has its own applications that are a little bit different from astrology that I think they're just really complementary. And so that's how I started using it. And I found that with my clients, it really resonates with them. I think it's a great tool to use for self-awareness and self-development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do you feel like with astrology, it can seem maybe, well, I guess birth charts, when you look at your birth chart, you can really narrow it down. But I was wondering if human design, do you feel like it shows you more actionable things to do or how to move through the world differently?
In some ways, I mean, one of the good things that astrology has that is not human design is in astrology, you can see the areas of life where the planets are falling in your chart, and that can give you more, a deeper understanding of how you're being impacted by those placements. In human design, there are certain basic aspects at the very beginning that can help you start implementing it in a more, yes, I would say probably in a more actionable way right away. Not that you can't implement things from astrology, but I find astrology can be, it really depends on the astrologer that you're working with, what their interpretation is. And with human design, I have found that at least at the first few levels, it's usually pretty consistent what human design mentors or, practitioners are saying. And so it's a little bit more standard.
Okay, yeah. So let's start at the beginning. When you want to get your human design profile or chart, you go and you put your birth date in, correct?
Yes, there are some free human design chart generators that you can find online, and you just have to put in your birth information. You will need the time of birth because that's just like in astrology, it's really important to get that as exact as possible because then there can be variations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you get your chart and then you pull it up and it's kind of like, okay, there's like lines and triangles and boxes and there's different colors and it's divided into different types. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, there are 4 or 5 types. Some people say 4, some people say 5. I think I would say there are 5, and I'll go through them and then explain which ones some people consider to be lumped together and other people think that there are actually enough nuances that it's good to break them out.
Mhm.
So so yes, the first thing I would look at when you get your chart is type, and that will show up. It'll be one of the fields. And so you are going to see either generator, manifesting generator, manifestor, projector, or reflector. The most common types are the generators and the manifesting generators. And so generators are the doers, the creative powerhouses. When I say creative, it doesn't have to necessarily be artistic, but it's people who are really, when they're doing things that light them up, they can keep going. They have this endless energy for it. They're often called the builders of the world because once they get going, they can see things through, and they have that
Mhm.
consistent access to life force and workforce energy as long as they're doing things that they enjoy. When they're doing things that they don't enjoy, they have the energy for it for a while, but then they'll be burnt out. And it's kind of
Mhm.
funny because this is a topic in astrology doesn't really come up, which is burnout, but it's a topic that does come up a lot in human design because it's talking about how our energy works. And so there is a way in which each type can burn out, basically. And when you are aware of that, it can really help you, not do that, not go in that direction. The generators, and they're about 36% of the population. And then you have the manifesting generators who are very similar. That's one reason why some people lump them together. So there are also doers, creative powerhouses, but then they tend to also be very multi-passionate. This is not to say generators cannot have different passions, but Manny Gens, that's kind of what I call them, they can be very, like really have so many different interests, and they can move very, very quickly. They can move into action very fast. And they are a lot of times multitasking, very much about multitasking and kind of finding the fastest or the most efficient way to get things done. Sometimes they skip steps, but there is a speed to a manifesting generator that you don't, with generators, it's more like step by step, more deliberate, more methodical, so that's sort of
Mhm.
there.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good distinction. So what is the percentage of manifesting generators?
They're 33%. So when you put them
33%.
together with the generators, it's about 70% of the population.
Okay,
Yeah,
wow.
so those 70%, they have this consistent access to life force and workforce energy to just, again, keep going if they're really lit up by something.
Mhm. And that's the same with the manifesting generators. They need to be excited about what they're doing,
Yes, yes.
even if they have multiple things.
Right, right. And sometimes they are really designed to be busy. And it's funny because once people understand their design, they can sometimes things that they thought were flaws, they realize, oh, this is actually what I'm supposed to be doing. So, for example, with a Manny Gen, they can have like 7 plates spinning, and then they're not really going to move forward with all of them. Some of them are going to fall and break. They're going to just walk, leave those, and it's totally okay. But they might have been conditioned to think that it was bad, that they were quitting things, or that they just can't stick to the same thing. They might be interested in learning the guitar for like 2 months, and then they drop it and move on to something else.
Yeah.
There can be a lot of judgment around that, but they're actually really designed to be trying many different things and then moving on. And so, I mean, they'll stick with some things, but it's okay for them to try some things and then drop those.
Okay. Yeah. That's good to know. So that's generators, manifesting generators. And then what's the next one?
So then we have projectors. Those are 22% of the population, and they're designed, so they're really here to be more of guides or advisors or teachers. And they have this bird's eye view of situations, but they can also look very deeply into a person and see the potential in that person. They often see things that other people miss, and they can get really good at a particular system and then using that system to help others. And their energy tends to ebb and flow. So they don't have that consistent access to life force, workforce energy. The ones I've talked to, usually they say, I can work for about 3 hours and then I have to take a nap. And
Really?
that's not to say they don't get their work done, but they're doing it they're not really designed to work in a traditional 9 to 5 type of.
Wow, that's very interesting. I wonder if because they're good at systems, you said, and then they pass those on. I don't know. I guess I was just thinking like if they're really good at systems and then they're teaching, they're also creators kind of in a way, or
I mean, any of the types can be creators.
yeah.
For sure. And we'll see that as, we have famous people in most of these categories. And
Okay.
so anybody can create. It's just it's more like the way that they create, right? And also
Okay.
with projectors, usually what is so valuable when it comes to them is their advice, is their perspective rather than the doing, the action.
Okay.
Whereas
Wow.
with the generators and manifesting generators, it's more of they're bringing things, ideas into form, right, into the tangible world. And so, and actually, a lot of times projectors are very good at guiding generator types. So that's one way they can work together.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, and it's not to say projectors cannot do anything. It's just generally, again, they have this perspective that can be really valuable. So it can be hard if they're in a job where they're meant to be, just doing, producing, like being kind of measured by the hour. That would be really hard for a projector.
Yeah. It almost seems to me, and I admit this could be wrong, but it sounds more like intellectual or something, like they would be drawn into intellectual fields.
Well, it's funny because I actually have been looking at the charts of some basketball players, and some of them are also projectors. So
Really?
yeah, so I'm curious. I've been like, wow, I can't believe that they have all this energy to be like an NBA basketball player and they're a projector, right?
Because they need
So,
naps.
so these are all, we're talking about very high level, and of course there are other layers to a chart. So some projectors are going to have more energy than others and more physical energy. I see what you're saying though. It does sound more intellectual, but I suppose, thinking about an NBA player, they are learning a system of basketball and seeing it from their perspective. And so some people may not consider that intellectual, but I'm sure there is
it's a strategy based. Yeah.
Strategy, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. Okay, so there's projectors, and then what's the next?
Then we have manifestors.
Manifestors.
Those are 9% of the population, and they're here to be innovators and disruptors and initiators. They're really here to get the ball rolling for everybody else, basically, and then to move on. They're not really meant to stay in the weeds. And I've talked to people where they really resonate with they get excited about starting things, but then if they have to stick with it and implement it, that's where they burn out. So
that's interesting. I'm just laughing because I had told you right before we started that I looked up my son and he's a manifester. So I'm thinking about all of his collections.
yeah, does that make sense for him? I mean,
I don't
starting
know.
things?
Maybe. I feel like he has a lot of interests, and he's still young, so it's just fun to see what he's going to be into next all the time. Okay, and then that leaves us with one more type.
Yes, the reflectors, who are 1% of the population, and this is really interesting. They're here to reflect the well-being or lack of well-being of their community or where their environment. They're sort of sometimes called a cosmic barometer, and they're really here to reflect what other people have to heal in themselves. And if you were to look at their chart, all of these shapes, so for those of you who haven't seen a human design chart, in the middle, you'll see all of these shapes like chakras, except there are 9 of them instead of 7. And in a reflector's chart, all of the shapes are white. Nothing is colored in. They do have some lines here and there, but they don't have, or what we call gates, but they don't have any of the shapes colored in. So that's how you can tell. And that's wherever we are, we haven't gotten into this yet, but wherever there's openness in our chart or something white is where we're taking in energy from other people.
Okay. I like how I'm already like, wow, I just learned something. I've looked at my chart and like you said, it can be overwhelming, but seeing the things that go up the middle as chakras, that actually just kind of made it resonated and made me think, okay, I can maybe understand that a little bit better than like, what are all these shapes?
Yes, yes. All the shapes are energy centers and they all have a particular type of energy. And so when it is colored in your chart, then you have consistent access to the energy in that energy center. Whereas when it's white, then you are receiving and amplifying other people's energy there and learning a lot of lessons, gaining a lot of wisdom. And so that's really interesting to figure when you start looking at your chart and you compare it to the charts of your loved ones or friends or coworkers, you can begin to understand the dynamics between you and the other person.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Yeah, so where do we go from here? Should we talk about should we talk about certain traits? Do you call them profiles or do you call them types?
I call them types because there's another aspect of human design called profiles, which are if you were to look at your chart, there's a fraction, what looks like a fraction, like a 2-4 or 4-6, and that's in human design called a profile. So that's just a component of human design. So what I would say we're still talking about the types here.
So you have your types and then you have your profiles. Okay. That makes sense.
I can add a little bit more about each type. So now once you know your type, then there's something else called strategy, which is the best way for you to navigate the world. And so for a generator, it is to respond to things. So instead of trying to like getting an idea and trying to just make that happen, forcing that, it's to wait and see what is coming to me in my environment, right? How am I being inspired by actual tangible things in my environment? And then what is my gut? What is it drawing me towards? You know, is this exciting me? Is this something that I'm like, wow, this is so cool? And even if I don't logically know why, I'm just really drawn to that and I'm responding to that. And usually that's going to lead to something. Human design doesn't mean that whenever you follow your strategy that everything works out perfectly, but it's the experience that you're meant to be having so that you can learn from that. And it's just, the correct experience for you.
Okay.
So with a generator, it is very much about waiting. And the reason for that goes to the mechanics of each type's energy field or aura. So for a generator, they have a very open magnetic aura. So they're always bringing things to them. And that's why, there can be this trust that, okay, I can see what is coming and then respond to that. I don't have to go out and make things happen. Things can flow more easily in this way.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And also seems counterintuitive in our culture.
It is very counterintuitive. And this is a topic that is huge in human design, which is conditioning, which is the ways in which a lot of times we aren't acting in accordance with our design because of the way that we've been raised or because of even our experiences and what society is telling us. So this whole attitude of just do it, go out as soon as you have the idea, make it happen. And that can work for certain types, and for other types there can be more resistance, it can be more difficult. Whereas when you wait for something to come to you, then doesn't mean that you're being passive. You're still doing things that you enjoy, but it's like doors can open more easily. It's that idea.
Yeah, I like that. So each different type has a responding strategy or a way that
each one has a strategy. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so the manifesting generator, they also respond But then they're also meant to do the second action before they actually initiate, which is to inform. And that means informing people close to them who are going to be impacted by the decision. And it's a way of lessening resistance or lessening the possibility other people are going to get angry about them. Because a lot of times they move so fast that they leave people behind and those people get upset. And so one way to try to minimize that is just to let them know, hey, I'm going to do this, right? But they are meant to be responding to something first. So like the generator, but then they inform and then they act.
Okay.
So and that doesn't come easily to them, like informing. And
because that comes they have to stop and
right. And so and sometimes there's this feeling of, well, why do I have to tell other people? I just want to go out and do it. And it comes from because they're a combination of generators and manifestors. So we have, we'll talk about projectors first, but manifestors also are supposed to inform. So, but let me go back to the projectors. Projectors are also designed they're supposed to wait for an invitation and also be recognized. So they have a very penetrating aura. That's the reason that they're meant to be waiting for an invitation to make sure that the other person recognizes their value, and the value of their advice, because otherwise other people can misinterpret them or misunderstand their intention, can get upset with them, and that's really a waste of their energy. And they don't have that consistent access to life force, workforce energy. And so that can lead them to, it can lead to a wound for a lot of projectors where they're like, I'm just trying to help. I have this advice for you. I know how you can, do this better. And other people are like, they're not recognizing them. And so they're not receptive to that at all. Okay. So that's why it's better for them to wait for an invitation and also being recognized. Yeah, that's their strategy. And then the manifestors, again, they're the only ones really who can the way they work is they have this internal creative nonverbal flow that just all of a sudden gives them a surge to act. They have a lot of power. They're here to make impact. But because of that, other people they can move quickly, and so other people can get angry with them too. So it's better if they inform the people who are going to be impacted by their decision as a way of lessening the resistance and also maybe, preventing that anger. It's really hard for them to do that as well because they tend to be very independent and they sometimes have been told no a lot. And so then they're like, well, if I'm going to be told no anyway, I'm just going to do it. But honestly, it can really lessen the resistance if they just inform the people around them, I'm going to do this.
Right. Yeah. That's funny. So yeah, I'm interested to hear more. I feel like we a little bit glossed over manifestor first because I was saying like, oh, my son, is a manifestor, but I'm interested to see what type of person we're going to talk about as a manifestor.
Oh yeah. And also one other thing about the manifestor aura is very protective because they're not really here to be influenced by other people. They're actually here to impact other people. So their aura actually keeps out the wrong people from them. So it can, sometimes people call it repelling, which, a lot of people, that doesn't sound great, but it's really supposed to be protective of them and their energy so that only the right people come through and other people don't.
So like the other, how you said the generators and even the mani-gens have a lot of energy when they're being lit up. Do the manifestors have strong energy or do they need more rest?
They also don't have that consistent access to life force or workforce energy. When they get the surge to act, they will have tremendous energy for that. So at the beginning, right? But then at a certain point, that's why it's hard for them to stay in the weeds or to implement things because at a certain point, it's not sustainable for them. Their energy just isn't meant for that. They're really meant to be taking some rest and then waiting for the next urge to act, the next surge. And so they're really, so projectors, manifestors, and reflectors all need more rest in their schedules because they work differently.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And then the reflectors.
Yes. So the reflectors, they're really interesting again, because they're taking in so much energy from others. What works best for them is to make sure they're in a place that feels good to them, in an environment that feels good to them, with people that feel good to them. And they're also very connected to the lunar cycle. some of this starts to sound a little bit more mystical with the reflectors, but they basically, the moon moves through, because they have all that openness in their chart, all the white energy centers, the moon, as it goes through their chart throughout a month, it will give them the energy of each type throughout the month. And so they actually know what it feels like to feel like a generator or like, you know, a manifester at a certain point in the month. And so they have this, they're meant to be kind of using that as their strategy for when to figure out what is the best thing for them to do. They need more time to sort of get all the awareness information over the course of a month. This is kind of for big decisions, but otherwise they are, what works best for them is just to make sure that they're in a place that feels good to them with people who feel good to them, because they're taking in all that energy.
Wow. Okay. I feel like I just had a flashback, and I don't know if it was a conversation we had leading up to this, or maybe it was even with astrology, but it was like sometimes people need to take like a full moon cycle before they make a decision. Is that kind of what you mean with the reflectors? They need to wait for
Yes.
a full month. Okay.
Yes. Generally for big decisions, obviously for smaller decisions, it can be what feels good to them in the moment.
Yeah.
But for big decisions, that's what they're, because
Mm-hmm.
that will give them all the perspective and awareness they need for their decision
Yeah.
once they go through that experience throughout the month. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I like that, actually. Are there types that don't need that? Like that's too much, so you'll get confused?
Yeah, so now we're talking about something called authority, which is our decision-making process. And that's it really depends on which center, it has to do with which centers are colored in for you or defined. That's a term, defined.
Okay.
Something's colored in, it's defined, which again, always just means that you have consistent access to the energy of that center. And so certain people are here to go with their gut response in the moment,
Mm.
to really trust that. And what can get in the way of that is the mind. You know, they get that gut response, but then the mind comes in and makes them question. You know, it says that's not logical. Like this is logical.
Mm.
So that kind of interfere
Yeah.
with the gut response. Other people are meant to go with their intuitive hits that they're getting, which is also very quiet, and so they really have to be tuned into their body for that. So again, that's also spontaneous. But then there are other types who are meant to sleep on decisions because they have, this is called emotional authority. They're really meant to wait out or ride out their emotional wave and then get to a point of emotional clarity or neutrality where they're like, where they figure out, okay, I still feel the same way about this decision that I did in the beginning, so I'm going to move forward with it, or maybe I don't. So certain types do need more time, and certain people, because it's not necessarily type to type, but certain people do need more time, and other people can be more spontaneous. And then there are rare types of authorities as well that can come into it. But those three that I discussed are the most common ones.
The most common. So
Yeah.
we've got the type, we've got
The strategy.
the strategy,
Yes.
and then there's the profile, which is
Yes.
your traction. And where does that come into play with the emotional center, or is that a different
No,
thing?
it's a different thing. And
Okay.
before we move on to that, I just wanted to say one more thing, which is there's something called signature for each
Mm-hmm.
type. And it's basically when you know that how do you know that things are in alignment for you, right?
Oh,
What
yeah.
feeling should you, in theory, be experiencing? And so generators, when they're feeling lit up, when they're doing what they really enjoy, then they have a feeling of satisfaction when they're in alignment. So at the end of the day, they feel like they spent their energy the way that they wanted to, in ways that made them feel good, and they feel really satisfied. And the opposite of that can be frustration when they are feeling, and it's a little bit nuanced for generators because, again, going back to the way that they learn, there's a stair-step learning curve. So they're going to have times when they have a surge of mastery or in mastery, and then there's a plateau in their growth.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can get frustrated because they're wanting to break through to the next level. So there can be some frustration there. But usually there's a difference between being frustrated because I just want to get to the next level, get to the next breakthrough, or being frustrated because this activity is no longer aligned. You know, like if the frustration continues day after day after day, and you start to realize, okay, this is not going away.
Right.
So
Like the same thing is
like, it's
not
not that I want to
bringing.
master this
Yeah.
anymore, it's that I just don't want to do this anymore. So it's something
Yeah.
to pay attention to. If as a generator you start to feel frustration, it's just, again, this is just something to figure out, okay, is it really that I no longer want to do this, or is it that I just have to be patient? Maybe I need to walk away from this for a little bit and then come back to it.
That's a good distinction. Yeah.
The Mani-gens also similarly have frustration and or rather satisfaction and frustration, but because they have some of that manifestor energy, they can also experience some of the manifestor. um, I'm always skipping over the projectors, but I guess because we're talking about the manifesting generators, but for manifestors, they experience peace when things are in alignment, and then they experience anger when they're out of alignment. And so the manifesting generator or Mani-gen can also experience some of that as well. So they could feel satisfaction and peace, and then also feel frustration and anger.
Okay, so a little bit of both.
Yes. And the projectors, when they're in alignment, they feel success, which can sound a little strange because it's not really an emotion exactly, but it can look like maybe when people are really recognizing them, taking their advice, maybe referring them to friends, and they just generally, that can feel like success. Whereas if, let's say, they are giving advice and it's not being taken well, nobody's paying attention to them, then they can feel bitterness or resentment. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
that can come into play. And with reflectors, they feel a sense of surprise or delight when things are in alignment because they can very much see the potential of humanity. So when they experience something that's delightful, it's like, oh, yay, this is great. This is, in alignment. But when they are out of alignment, they feel disappointment. And again, it's just because they can see the potential and it's not being met. And so there can be like a really deep disappointment.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Then do the lines come into play, or is that
Right.
really, that's a personal I mean, I guess it's all really personal.
Yeah, but some things are connected to your type, and then some things are not necessarily, right? And so for the profiles, you have these. If you look at a body graph or human design chart, you're going to see all these numbers, and those numbers are what we call gates, and they are energies or themes, archetypes that we, in some cases, that we have consistent access to, and whenever you see a number with a decimal point and then a number after it, the number that follows it is called a line. And those lines give you more nuance as to how you're experiencing the energy of the gate. And then also we have something called profile, which it comes from the top gates, which are and I know that a lot of you are not looking at a human design chart, but there are what we call sun gates, and they're at the very top. And so you have the profile comes from the lines there. So for example, you said you were a 4-6, correct? Yes. So there are 6 lines and there are 12 profiles. Those are sort of our role that we're playing in the world, kind of another archetype as well. It gives us a lot of information about ourselves. They're not tied to a particular type, so that it becomes really more about you. And so I guess probably the easiest way is just to go through the 6 lines and explain what they are.
Yeah.
So somebody who has the first line or line 1, they are very much an investigator, somebody who really needs to get to the bottom of things. They really enjoy studying things that if they are interested in something, they want to learn all about it. And they get their security from information, from learning. And then at a certain point, they can become an expert and then share the information with other people. So that's the first line. The second line is somebody who is I like to call them a natural talent. It's somebody who just has these innate gifts. They don't necessarily know how to explain what they do, but it just comes easily to them. And it's really good for them to spend time alone doing things that they enjoy. They are going to be, when they do that, other people are going to recognize their gifts and call them out, like want them to bring their gift into the world. So that's the second line. The third line is somebody who is very much an experimenter, somebody who learns through trial and error. And they really want to test things for themselves and see what works and what doesn't. And then they can share with other people what their lessons were, what works and what doesn't.
Okay.
The fourth line is somebody who is very much a connector of people. And they bring community together. Their community, their network is so important to them because they get their opportunities from them. So a lot of fourth lines that I've talked to have never even had to apply for a job because they always got a job through a friend or somebody they knew. And so it's really an interesting, yes, it's so true. Pretty much all the fourth lines I've asked, they've all told me that. And so they really get the way the first line gets their sense of security through information, the fourth line gets it through relationships, through understanding people. And their community is so, and it has to be the right people, not just like any group, but it really has to be the right people for them. But the quality of their life is really going to be very much influenced by the quality of the people in their life. And that's the fourth line. The fifth line is somebody who is here to come up with out-of-the-box solutions, and they're very much visionaries, and they can be teachers, guides. They get projected on a lot. So initially it can be somebody who thinks, oh my gosh, that person can solve my problem. And if they can't, or if they don't want to, then there can be this kind of fall from grace where other people are like, oh, you're not as great as I thought you were. And so it can be really painful. And so that sometimes they hide a little bit because they've had those sorts of experiences. And the last line is the sixth line. And they're very interesting in that they have 3 phases to their life. So from 0 to 30, they are like a third line, doing live experimentation, trial and error, seeing what works and what doesn't. Then from 30 to 50, this is what we call being on the roof, where they sort of stand back. They're not quite doing all the experimentation. They're taking in their lessons from the first 30 years of their life, learning from that, seeing what's, being what other people are doing to be successful. They're storing up their energy in a way, because then after age 50, there's this term called coming off the roof, when they step into their role model energy, where they're really embodying how to live authentically, and other people are watching them, and they're really, if they're doing that correctly, then they're really inspiring other people to also live authentically. Wow. So yeah, it's a very interesting line. And so the 12 profiles are a combination of 2 of those lines.
Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I feel like I had seen something where a celebrity, gosh, I am blanking, had like a 6 line in their profile. Oh, it was Pamela Anderson of all people.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And now she's like over 50, and she's, going makeup free, and like kind of just living really naturally and being okay with aging and natural beauty, which I know some people think is really silly. I was reading something the other day where people were like, I've never worn makeup anyway. Why does this matter? And I'm like, well, it doesn't, but it does because of who she was, I think, personally. And if I'm correct that she has a 6 in her profile.
That's so interesting. Yes, I will look her up because that trajectory would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Her just deciding to just be herself and not, and it's not that she's saying that other people have to be like her at all. That's not the role. It's just, this is who she is. She's embodying it, and she's inspiring other people.
Yeah. And I hope I'm right. But either way, I do think that's a cool journey for her.
Yes. And yeah, some of the singers that we have are also have 6 lines, and so it is interesting to look. It's, obviously when they haven't yet hit 50, you don't know how that's going to.
Right. What does that mean?
But it is interesting to see, and the reason that, so just like in astrology, there are certain cycles, astrological cycles or milestones that come up in human design. So, why 50? Well, because that's after the Chiron return. And our Chiron, we can think of it as a wound that we have to heal. And once we heal it, then we can help the gift of it is then being able to help other people with that wound.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. You hear a lot about the Saturn return. You don't hear as much about the Chiron return.
Yes. And so again, with the 6th line, from 0 to 30, that's the Saturn return is around there between 28 and 30 for most people. And yes, that's where we grow up, basically. It's when we're supposed to become the authority in our own life. Before that, other people are the authorities, our parents or teachers. And then after the Saturn return, we are the authority. And so that's another milestone also in human design.
Wow, that's cool. All right. Should we look at some of these celebrities that you've looked up and studied their
Yes, yes,
types and
definitely.
profiles?
So we can start with the generators. So one, and this is interesting because you are a 4-6 generator. It's Dolly Parton.
Dolly
She,
Parton's a 4-6.
yeah, she's also a 4-6.
Ooh, that's cool. I
Yes.
love her.
And so again, with the four, and this is interesting actually, because I was looking at her life at like she's done so much for her community, right? She has,
Oh
so
yeah.
of course there's the part of her that we see, which is the musician and even the actress. But then
Mhm.
she has started all these, she started all these business ventures to invest back into where she grew up in Tennessee, which was really poor. And she has really helped to revitalize the area and to help that community. So community is obviously a very important part of her life. And we can see that with the fourth line. And so I would also imagine she probably has been able to receive opportunities through the people that she's connected to. You know, I would imagine that that's been an important part of her life as well with the fourth line. But definitely when I was reading about all the things that she's done for her community, that really, I thought that's very fourth line energy, that sense of really wanting to connect with other people and to make things better for other people.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, she definitely has. Every time I go to the library, she has her library, of books that she started where you can sign up. And I think that's a cool thing
Yes,
too.
it started, yes, and that one started off just in Tennessee, and then it's been expanded, I think, to even all
Mhm.
the way. I feel like I read that even in the UK, somewhere in the UK, they started it too, and it's
Wow.
a book for, yes, I think for a child. What is it, from
Yeah,
the
like
time
a
they're
book a
born?
month. Yeah.
Book a month until they make it to kindergarten. It's really an amazing movement that she started there.
That's pretty cool. So she's a generator
She's a generator,
and a
and
4-6.
so yes, so we would imagine, okay, as long as she's doing things that light her up, she's going to have so much energy for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I mean, yes, music, acting. She even had a TV show for a little while. She's done, and she's collaborated. Also, actually, now I think about it, she's collaborated with a lot of people as well, which could also be that fourth line energy. We can see it. She's had a tremendous career, and it seems like she hasn't really ever let up or stopped. Like she's just kept going,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, even when things weren't working, which is interesting because she's a six line. So for the first 30 years, you know, there was a lot of experimentation there while she was still, I'm sure, trying to make her, you know, mark in country first. And then she wanted to move. And I saw the first time that she tried to do like a mainstream record, it didn't work out. But then the following year, she worked with this producer who was very, you know, I guess much more mainstream. And then she had her hit. So there's a lot of that experimentation, trial and error, what some people would call failure, but really it's not. It's just seeing what works and what doesn't, and then
Mm-hmm.
continuing to iterate until you figure out what does work. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of that for her.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. I was thinking she just put out like a rock album,
Yes,
which
yes,
is kind of cool.
I know. And then she recently performed
At the
in
soup.
in
No,
this.
wait, where did she perform? She
I
performed
can't
it. Was
remember
it at the Super
where.
Bowl?
Was it? I don't think it was the
No,
Super
no, it
Bowl,
wasn't the
but there were
Super Bowl.
images of her, you know, online, and it was, you know, one of her provocative outfits, right? Which she
Yeah.
always looks great in, and it's obviously what makes her feel good. But she's amazing. She hasn't stopped. I mean,
No,
she has
she hasn't
kept
stopped.
going.
Oh, I know. It was some kind of football game because she had on a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader
Yes,
outfit.
yes, that's
It
it.
wasn't the Super
Yes,
Bowl, but I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah, so
yes.
good. That's
And
funny.
you know, so then as a six line, now she's definitely past 50. And so many people really admire her, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and as not just as an artist, as a businesswoman as well, but then also as a philanthropist. So I would say that she very much embodies that role model energy. And she's never
Yeah.
trying to tell other people what to do. Like that's, I think,
No.
something that people really like about her is she's just like, let people be who they want to be, let them love who they want to love. And that's what she's about. And I think that's one of the things that really resonates with people in her audience. We're probably very different from each other, but who really admire that about her.
Yeah.
Just lets people be, but she also wants to be who she is.
Mm-hmm. Would you say the six line energy is like a lead by example type of
Yes. Yes. I would
energy?
say it's a lead by example. It's not that they're deliberately trying to be a leader. It's that they are just, by being themselves, they give permission to other people to be themselves. They empower other people in that way.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I like that. Very
Yes.
cool. Was there another generator or was that?
Yeah, so we have Alanis Morissette, and she's a 6'2", so she also has that. I don't know if she's over 50 yet, or maybe she is. I'm not
She
sure.
might
Might be.
be.
She might be, right?
Or
Uh,
getting close. I don't know.
yes, but she's a 6'2", and generally, I didn't mention this before, but generally the first number is because there are parts of the human design chart that are conscious and energies. Anything that's in black in your chart that comes from your conscious side, those are energies that you're more aware of. And so in the profile, the first number that pops up is going to be the energy that you're probably more aware of in yourself. Whereas the second number in your profile, it comes from your unconscious side, and you may not see it as easily, but other people may see it more easily in you. So
Mm-hmm.
she's a 6'2", and usually people who have a 2, I mean, they are, again, innately talented and gifted. Sometimes they feel, maybe because they can't describe how they can't say, oh, I studied it here and I know exactly how to do this. And maybe that makes them feel like it's not really that much of a gift because it's too easy for them, right? They don't
Mm-hmm.
recognize that it's something that not everybody can do. And also, they really need time alone. So I'd be curious if she has, spent, because I'm sure she's really busy, but it would really, that would be something that's so important for a second line, is to have that alone time when
Mm-hmm.
they can just do what they enjoy doing. And, it's a little bit of a more introverted type of energy.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I looked her up and she is 49 and she will
Oh,
be
wow.
50. She'll be 50. I think it said June 1st.
Oh, this
So
year?
very
Yeah. That's
soon.
right up her.
Yeah,
That's so
that's very cool.
interesting. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it'll be really interesting to see what she does after, if there's any change to her career. I mean, how active has she been lately?
Well,
I'm
I just saw her on, I just happened to record an episode of Austin City Limits because she was on it. And
Oh, okay.
so I know she did that. And I think she's been doing little small tour things. But I will say, I feel like I think of her as someone who's like enlightened, but I don't know. Maybe there will be more to come on that front.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Is she is she somebody who sometimes steps away from the spotlight for a while and then comes back into the
I
spotlight?
feel like, yeah.
Yeah, that's my
Hmm.
impression. Whereas with Dolly, I feel like I mean, I feel I'm always hearing about her and what she's doing.
Yeah, she
Um,
doesn't stop.
yeah, she's amazing. Whereas I feel like with Alanis Morissette, I feel like there are quiet periods where you don't really hear about her,
Yeah.
where maybe she
Hmm.
withdraws. And so I'm curious if it's because of that second line energy where she feels the need to just be in her own energy for a while before she comes back out
Yeah.
into
Kind
the
of
world.
marinate a bit.
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's really important for people to know, especially if you have somebody in your life who has that kind of energy. It's just good to know it's not anything personal. It's just that they need some time to themselves, and
Hmm.
it's just the way that their energy works.
Even though she's a generator, they just
Right.
still
Even
need
if
the alone time. Yeah.
Exactly. Even though she's a generator and does, if she's doing what she enjoys, she does have a lot of energy. There is that part of her. That's what starts to make a chart more interesting, is those sorts of nuances where, yeah, she does have all this energy, but actually she also has to spend time alone, away from people, right? And doing
Hmm.
her own thing. And so that's where we start to, yeah, get more of these nuances.
Yeah.
Yes. The
Amazing.
other generator, Sarah McLaughlin, also
Okay.
a 6'2". So it's kind of interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, is she over 50? Um,
I'm not sure, but I read one time that she got offered a record deal after her first performance, like publicly. And I was like, that's amazing.
her
I
first
don't think that
performance?
happens. Like after she had her first gig or whatever, it was like, oh yeah, do you want a record deal? I don't know like how true that is. Obviously, she'd been writing and performing and doing stuff. Who knows if it was a showcase or some kind of industry thing, but the two line is like the natural ability kind of thing
Yes.
where yeah, I feel like she's like a kind of a musical prodigy, probably.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
very much that they just have these innate gifts and talents. And like I said, they may not even realize it, or they may think that's the way it is for everybody. and it's not
Right.
because it comes so easily to them.
Right. And she is 56, it says. So yeah,
Oh,
she's in
okay.
her sixth line
Yes,
energy.
it's a really interesting thing. Do you feel that she lives authentically or presents herself that way to her
I feel like
fans?
she always has. And I was just thinking, I don't know how old she was when she created Lilith Fair, but I
Yeah.
feel like that was her, yeah,
Yes.
that was a movement for sure.
It really was. Yes. That was in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
That was huge.
Mm-hmm. So that's yeah, kind of a leadership role, but like before the third
Hmm.
chapter of the sixth line, which is really
Yes.
cool.
I have talked to a lot of times six lines, even when they're young, people come to them for advice. I,
Mm-hmm.
I have I have come across that. And so you're a 4-6 and
Uh-huh.
wondering what has your experience been now that
Yeah. No,
know.
I definitely have been that person for a lot of people in my life, the advice giver, and also in my day job where I'm a hairstylist. People are like, "Oh, my goodness, I feel so much better after talk to you." So I
Yes.
think there's that.
Yes. And one other thing I forgot to say with six lines is a lot of times from a young age, they feel they have a mission and there's a fear of failing the mission. And obviously I don't know if that's how Elena's more Morissette or McLaughlin have felt, but for you, I wonder, have you felt since you were young that you had some kind of a mission?
I don't know if I if I did. I don't think it was super clear. No, I will say that I've always been drawn to music and art and creating in that like in the actual creativity field as far back as I can remember, and it like won't leave me alone. So I mean, I guess if that's a mission, maybe,
I would say that's a
whatever
mission.
yeah, at whatever level that is, I do feel like that's something that I don't remember not being drawn ever to that. So
Yes. And if you were to leave that, would that feel like some kind of a failure for you?
I
If you were,
think it would. I think it would, maybe not a failure, but I think I would feel like I was giving up or
Mhm,
something. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so interesting.
Mhm.
And then I'm curious before we move on, but with going back to Dolly Parton, she was a 4-6, and you have a 4. And so what role has your community or your network or have you received opportunities through them?
I do feel like yes, I do feel like a lot of times I don't necessarily have to go out looking for shows to play or something. Like people will recommend me for something, and even in my business as a hairstylist, yeah, it's always word of mouth. It's always people recommending, and I do feel like I don't have to work very hard at that. But I also kind of pride myself on this attitude of like, what's meant for me will find me,
Mhm.
like I think that I like to think that way
Yes.
because I used to, I don't know, somebody in my early days in my career said, if you ever, lose a client, don't stress out. There will be three more for each one that you lose. And I don't know, that stuck with me and I've always kind of just believed it. So I think it's worked.
Yeah.
That's kind of
Yeah.
weird, right? I don't know.
No, I think that's great. That's a great perspective to have. And
Hmm.
yes, and I love hearing that you have received these opportunities through people that you know, because that's exactly what I hear from other fourth lines.
Yeah, it's
It's so
really
consistent.
true. Yeah, it's really true. And I do feel like sometimes when I try really hard, it's almost the opposite
Hmm.
effect, where it's like you're trying too hard, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Let it be easy because this is the way
Mhm.
that it works for you. Yes.
But as we were saying in the beginning, that's counterintuitive of like what you're told is you're supposed to do. So it's hard. That's been a hard lesson for me to like let it be easy. Because when I'm not, sometimes I like the waiting part's hard or feeling like you're not doing something when you should, you know?
Yes. There's there's no there's a really good story that one of my human design mentors tells that when she was starting off with human design, she decided that she wanted to teach a class. So this is, let's say back in the 80s, she put up the flyer, she rented out a space, and she showed up and nobody was there. And then a few weeks later, somebody said, hey, why don't you teach a class on human design? So she was a generator. No, she's a manager. Sorry, she's a manager. So she decided to test this, and she went through the exact same actions where she put up the flyers, she rented the room, and then she showed up and all these people were there. But the
Wow.
difference was that the first time it was just an idea that she decided to make happen on her own. It wasn't in response to anything. And the second time is because somebody, suggested it to her, and then she was excited about it, and then she went through the same motions, and then she had this positive result.
Wow. That's very interesting. And I wonder, like, part of me thinks like, are you waiting for permission from somebody? You know what I mean? It's like, because you kind of, that's something for me where I'm like, I don't need anyone's permission, but an invitation, I guess, or the difference between the two.
Yeah, I think, again, if we think about the way that the aura of a generator or a mani-gen works, we are always pulling things toward us. And then, so it's kind of having that faith, that patience that the right thing is coming. And then it's just a matter of me responding to it, because obviously,
Right.
even though all these opportunities are coming, doesn't mean that they're all right for me. But
Totally.
it's the ones that really light me up. But
Yes.
having the patience to know, okay, if nothing has come up yet, I'm just going to keep doing my thing, which I enjoy. It's not that you do nothing, you keep doing what you
Right.
enjoy. But then all of a sudden, somebody's like, oh, hey, do you want to play this gig over here? Right. And it's like something
Right.
that you hadn't even thought of, that you couldn't
Hmm.
even have pursued because maybe it didn't even cross your mind. Has that
Yeah.
happened with certain opportunities?
I'd have to think a bit more on it, but yeah, it is interesting because yeah, I think because of the generator and having the energy of like do, and then you're like, but wait, So that's yeah, it's just an interesting and well, you've read my birth chart. You know that I'm like everything is almost like a contradiction
Yes.
in my chart. So or maybe I think of it that way. Maybe it's not like that as much, but kind of. Anyway.
Well, I will say human design is meant to be an experiment. So it's just
Yeah.
something to play with and see, okay, what happens
Yeah.
if I wait here instead of trying to make
Hmm.
this happen? Or maybe I have an idea, I write it down and I wait to see, does something show up in my environment that confirms that that's the right thing for me to act on and
Yeah.
excites me,
Yeah.
so that I don't waste my energy, because sometimes there's a lot
Hmm.
of that of wasting your energy on things that don't really go anywhere, that frustrate you, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
whereas there can be things that obviously there's so many things that have come so easily to you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool. It's funny because it's like I think about it in one way, but then it's almost like applying it to everything and maybe it's like that for everybody where you're like, okay, I think of it as like if I lose one client, there will be three more. But then in another sense where you're not being patient, then you're like, it's harder to do.
Yes.
But
Yes, definitely. And there are things in our chart that sometimes put pressure on us to act or to figure things out right away. And
or if you just see somebody else doing it and you're like, but they're
yes.
doing it. Okay, real quick, I want to tell you about my absolute favorite, can't live without it skincare product. I have been on a clean beauty mission and I love Skin X Erin. My favorite product is the pre-cleanse oil. I use that along with her super soft cleansing cloths to take off my makeup every night. It's 100% pure grapeseed oil, all power, no poison, and I swear it makes my eyelashes longer too. So I'm all in. All the products are so simple. There's 3 oils. My favorite, the pre-cleanse oil, a hydrating beauty oil, and a perfecting night oil to round it out. So head over to shopxerin.com, that's Erin, Erin, and use the code AshleyRiley10 for 10% off. Seriously, try it because great skin is so rock and roll.
I think that's what I really like about human design is sometimes we might wonder, why is this working for this person and it's not working for me?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's because the two of you are designed differently. And
Yeah.
and it's not anything that you're doing wrong. It's just that that's not the right thing for you, right? Something else.
Right.
you.
And it makes a lot of sense. Just, have you ever seen those charts where it shows like the waveforms of different energy?
Oh, yes.
And
Yes.
it's like excitement is like it's like the most waves, right? And
Mhm.
so when you're excited about something, of course, other people, you're going to be able to get more people on board with that because excitement is kind of contagious
It
in the
is,
same
yes. And
way
then you're
that.
feeling good too. You have the confidence, and that's what you're projecting out. And
Mhm.
people, obviously, we can sense that in somebody when they're really lit up by something and excited and happy to be sharing that, then that's very attractive.
Yeah, that's really cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, who was our famous Manny Gen?
Yes, there are a number of them. And let me see. So we have Stevie Nicks.
Oh,
Oh, she's another 60. There are a lot of I keep mentioning 60s. But yes, she's obviously had a tremendous career as well. And maybe I should just would you like me to share?
yeah, read them
Okay.
off.
Yeah, so we have Lana Del Rey,
Mm-hmm.
who's Tori Amos, and Joni Mitchell.
They're all Manny Gens.
They're all Manny Gens, yes. And Lana Del Rey, she's a 3-5. So that three line. So I was reading about her yesterday just to know more about
Yeah.
her career, but she kept changing her name a lot in the beginning, her
Yeah.
stage name. Like she went through so many iterations of that before she landed on Lana Del Rey. And so that's very much that third line energy of experimenting, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, seeing what really resonates with people, But I didn't realize that myself, that I
Yeah.
think she used like 5 or 6 different
I
names.
didn't know that many. I knew like Lizzie or something was maybe a name, or maybe that's her actual name.
Yeah, there was
She
another
seems
one.
mysterious to me, you know?
Mhm. Yes, yes, that fifth line energy can be very, I didn't say this before, but there can be a certain mystery or seduction to it that really draws people in. Because again, people are projecting onto the fifth line. And usually it's a positive projection in the beginning, but then it can also go negative. So I know for her that she has sometimes been criticized, maybe I think in the beginning she pushed against the idea that she was a feminist or she was being criticized for certain things. And so you start to see some of that negative projection on I've noticed it with celebrities who have the fifth line. There can be a lot of, people who absolutely adore them and then people who absolutely hate them. And there's like there's a
Wow.
lot of
Yeah.
projection going on. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So then Stevie Nicks, Tori Amos is a 5-1. So she also has that fifth line energy.
Hmm.
Do you consider her also somewhat mysterious? I'm curious.
I do. And I do feel like she's someone who disappears,
Mm.
maybe,
Yes,
from
the
the
fifth line can
public.
hide sometimes because
Yeah.
again, since they get projected on, and some of them have had negative experiences where people turned on them, because
Hmm.
those people felt that the fifth line didn't somehow meet their needs or solve their problem or do something the way they expected them to. And so
Hmm.
that can be really that can be really hard for them. And so sometimes they hide a little. But she has very ardent fans for sure.
Yes.
And people who project very positively onto her. Joni Mitchell's she's a 2-4, so that one brings in those innate gifts of the second line, but then also the community, the network, getting opportunities through people that you know. And so I'm not sure how much that has shown up. I'm not
Yeah.
in her
I
career.
feel like I've heard stories of in the early days of her, like the Laurel Canyon group of musicians where they would all just get together and jam. And that's kind of how she got discovered.
Yes.
So that would make sense, I think.
Yes, you're right. I think I was reading, yes, that's how somebody discovered her and then wanted to introduce her to other people. That's very
Hmm.
much that fourth line energy. Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's technically very gifted naturally. So I think that two line makes sense too. That's cool. I'm starting to understand this a bit.
Yeah,
Oh,
and she's
cool.
also an artist, right? Not
Yeah. She's a
like she has,
painter, I think, as well.
yes, and she has designed her album covers, a lot of them.
Hmm.
That's what I read. Yes, she is very artistic, has definitely lots of gifts. So that's the Manny Gens, the And also with the mani-gens, they tend to be very busy, like because they have all that energy. They respond like generators, but then also can quickly move into action like a manifester. So they can be really busy people. And sometimes they're called time benders because they can get so much done in a short amount of time.
Wow. Now, with the Mani-gens, because they are also the manifestor profile, they can take action, right? But do they inform before the action?
Yes.
Yeah.
First, they have to respond. So
Respond.
they do have to respond to something in their environment. So that's the generator part. That comes first.
Okay.
And then after that, then they inform. Ideally,
Respond.
they inform, and then they take action.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's funny because my son is a Mani-gen, and I can really see the differences in the way our energy works. One summer, he had to take summer classes, and this is before I knew too much about human design. And so I told him to only take his summer classes. I didn't want him, being distracted by anything else. So no part-time job, nothing like that.
Mm-hmm.
But over the course of the summer, I realized how restless he was getting. And I was thinking, I think I messed up. I think I should have just let him be really busy with other things. I was just worried that I wanted him to really focus and do well in his summer class, because that's how I would do it that's my energy. But then I started studying human design more, and I realized, oh my goodness, he's a Mani-gen. And not just that, but he has a particular channel that's the busiest channel in the whole chart. Like, he is designed to
Wow.
be busy. It keeps him healthy. And so I realized that he is the kind of person who has so many things going on at one time, many balls in the air. And that's just the way that his energy works.
Wow. Yeah. That's really cool.
And I do, when he tells me he's going to do something, when he does the informing, I energetically can feel that. It's really different if he asks for permission rather than just saying, I'm going to do this now. And I'm like,
Really?
oh,
Okay.
okay, well, now I know. Good.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. So for me, being on the receiving end of that, I can really feel that.
Yeah. That's cool. How old is your son?
He is 20.
Okay. Yeah. So he's,
Yeah.
not asking for permission much, probably.
Right.
Anymore,
Right.
honey. Yeah, that's cool. I was just thinking like, I was just trying to relate like with my son. I'm like, does he ask me for permission ever?
Or does he just do it?
Or does he just do it? And he's 11, so
Yes.
anyway,
It's
yeah.
different, but it's good to know though. Once you know,
Yeah.
it's then maybe you realize, oh, I'm not going to take this personally. This is the way that he
Yeah.
was designed, right? So
Yeah, that's
it's just
very
something to keep in mind.
mm-hmm.
And then
Okay.
I was only able to find, so one thing for everyone to know is we actually looked up many other people, but there wasn't always a precise birth time for certain singers and songwriters. And so, yes, that was a bit of a limitation on this. But the only projector that I found was Annie Lennox.
Oh
And
wow.
she is a 6'2" projector. So again, back with there were lots of
Yeah, the
6'2"
six
among these.
two. Wow.
Yeah. So what do you think of that? Do you also think of her as somebody who has innate talents and gifts?
I, you know, she might be one that I know the least about, but I do feel like just critically acclaimed talent. Yes. You know, that's interesting. And the 6'2", like finding out all of these people are 6'2", well, not all, but a lot of them is very interesting. And I mean, could there also be like was somebody a 2'6", or has it all been 6'2"?
No, it's been 6'2". So there are no 2'6" is not one of the
It's not
possible
a thing.
combinations. Yeah.
Okay.
It's only 2'4" and 2'5". So yeah,
Okay.
certain combinations that only go in one direction where yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And she's I know, I'm sure she's over 50, and she is resurfacing a bit, in some capacities, singing with a new generation of people right now.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Who is she
Yeah, I've
singing
seen
with?
her just show up and like sing. Where was she? I think she was at a festival recently, and she was singing like with a big group, and it was, a lot of people that are right now
More
current.
popular right now?
Right. Not that she's not, but just currently like releasing albums and that kind of
Mhm.
thing. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. She seems to me like somebody who definitely carries that role model energy of knowing
Mm-hmm.
who she is. And she seems to have a strong personality. I don't know her as well either, but just my
Yeah.
general impression of her.
And which one did you say is the barometer of the
Oh,
community?
reflectors.
Those are
The one,
reflectors.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Which unfortunately I couldn't find anyone who is a reflector.
Because they're so rare. Is
They
there
are.
a reflector, like a just a famously known reflector that is in any type of field?
So some people say that Sandra Bullock is a reflector, but when I look up her birth data, there's a C rating. It's not really for sure. I prefer just working with A ratings, where you really
Mm-hmm.
excellent birth time information. And I also checked because sometimes you can, even with just the birth information, you can look up all the possible types for the day, and then it might be the same type the whole day. So then it doesn't matter that you don't have the birth information. But in her case, I remember looking it up and it wasn't just a reflector, there were some other possibilities. And so
Mm-hmm.
I don't usually, she's the one that will come up that a lot of people use, but
But
I hesitate
yeah.
to do that because I don't know that her information is correct. But Margaret Atwood, the author of The Handmaid's Tale, she is a
Hmm.
reflector.
Okay.
And actually, Clarence Thomas, the Supreme Court Justice, is a reflector. I was kind of surprised to see that, but those are the two that I can think of right now. Yes, in other fields.
Yeah. Interesting. I haven't read The Handmaid's Tale. Have you? Was it a show now too?
It's a show on Hulu, and
Yeah.
I did read the book, which is excellent. I haven't watched the show because I can't watch things that are too violent, and I know that
Yeah.
can be quite violent, but it's supposed to be a great show.
Yeah. I know. I'm like that too. I prefer TV that is just mindless in a way. It's like I
It's
don't want
just
to think. If
entertaining.
I miss an episode, I don't want to have to worry about it, you know?
Yes. Yes, I think for that one you probably have to
Yeah. You got to
following
know
the
what's going
story.
on. Yeah, that's funny. Okay, so who were our manifestors?
Okay, so we have Gwen Stefani, Carole King, and Patti Smith.
Wow. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, so Gwen Stefani, she's a 2-4. So again, she also has some innate gifts, but then also that the connection, being a connector and getting opportunities from the people that she is connected to. Carole King is a 3-5, so similar to Lana Del Rey. So we would imagine a lot of experimentation, trial and error, but then
Mhm.
also maybe having out of the box solutions or perspectives on things being projected on as well, potentially. I'm wondering, is there a sense of mystery around her or not so much?
I mean, maybe a little bit. I think I could be wrong. I'm like, maybe it's because she's a little bit in a different era than me, but it's like I
Mhm.
don't know that I know her personal life is like some of the
Yes,
other ones I do. So maybe that would be the mystery.
yes,
Lana Del Rey, I feel like her music even is mysterious to me.
it
And
really
like,
is.
and it's very
Yes.
seductive. Like you said, there's like the five line, like she's fully that I was like, oh, yeah, I could.
That's such a good point. Even her image, yeah, she has that kind of seductive glamour that and when I was reading about her, they called her like or her music cinematic, this
Mm-hmm.
which is can be also glamorous, right? And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a good point about her music too. It has that feeling.
Yeah.
Yes.
And going back to the 4-6 with Dolly Parton, I feel like her music seems like there's a lot of connection and community in things that she writes about, you know.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I hadn't
I
thought
could
about
see that
that.
in her. Trying to think if there was another 4-6 musician. Or was it just her? Everyone else had a six or
Joni Mitchell has a 2-4, and
two,
Gwen
four.
Stefani also a 2-4, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The two line is the gifts and the four line is the like community connection.
Yes. And then Patti Smith, 5-1. So actually, she also has the 5.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. And to me, I feel like who was the other 5-1? It was
Oh, Tori, I think it was,
yeah, I feel
yeah,
like
Tori Amos.
both of those women to me seem so independent and strong, you know? I think that's a cool connection. Hmm.
Yes, and it's interesting to think about manifestors too, because the manifestors are the ones who are here to get things going. They're not actually responding to anything. They have this, I don't know, they can be very sort of this connection to the divine, where not that it's not to say that nobody else has that, but they are, the way their energy works is they have this creative nonverbal flow that just all of a sudden gives them the surge to act on something. And when they're aligned with that, they really have tremendous impact on others. But it can be hard, I think, for women because we're not really necessarily encouraged to be initiators,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be hard to be a woman who's a manifester. I wonder how often they actually act on that, or if they ever hold themselves back. But
Mm-hmm.
Patty Smith doesn't seem like somebody who would hold herself back.
No, I don't think so. That's cool. That's funny. I actually love that it was all women that we had. And we did. I really tried hard. I was like, Tom Petty. What about Tom Petty?
I
Like,
know there wasn't a birth time and an accurate birth time
yeah.
for him. Unfortunately, for some people, sometimes there'll be one that's estimated and you're not really sure where it's coming from.
Yeah.
But then sometimes there's nothing. It's just time unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just don't know. But yeah, and going back to Annie Lennox as a projector, I'm curious. I wonder how that plays out for her. I wonder if she's a projector. Could be, maybe. Is she the one you said had started singing or collaborating with people who are currently
Yeah. Yeah. I just
yeah,
saw her performing at a festival.
yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
wonder if maybe it's some of those people, and I assume they might be younger, some of her collaborators.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they look up to her as a mentor,
Oh,
that,
yeah.
like very much
Yeah.
that's his
She
line.
was very revered. It was like, oh, Annie Lennox. Oh my gosh. We're so lucky to have her here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes. Yeah, because as a projector, she would have I think, a very interesting perspective for other people that she can share, and also perhaps guide them in some way, because that's what projectors are really good at, is guiding
Mhm.
others. So yes, that's really interesting.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, this has been so interesting, honestly. I feel like I've learned a lot, and it's cool to see other people, other musicians and what their types might be. And I'll probably be pondering that actually the rest of the day and thinking about cool things about it. But can you tell me a little bit about what you do when you coach women with the holistic career coaching, and like what your favorite part of doing that is, if someone wanted to work with you, what that would look like, a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. I love to work with people who are maybe feeling dissatisfied with what they're currently doing or unhappy, but they don't know what lights them up, or they're not clear on it. And I really feel that using people's astrology and human design can be so revealing and can really help guide people to what really is something that's going to connect deeply with them and give them a lot of satisfaction in their work. And so that's a process I take my clients through.
I like that too, especially because if when people are dissatisfied with their career and they don't know what they want, that gives you a really nice access point to kind of get that interest going of what could be possibilities for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes people don't, maybe a little like the second line, don't even realize that some of the things that come easily to them are gifts, and that these are
Hmm.
things that they can share with others, that they could enjoy doing with other people, and being paid for that. And so it's
Right.
it's this process of discovery. And I to me, there's nothing better in astrology or human design, because it's so personal to you, and there's so many
Mhm.
layers. We've been talking about some of them here, but there's so many more in human design that go even deeper, and can really help you know yourself at a really deep level.
That's cool. And so what does it look like for someone to work with you? Do you do session-based work, or do you do like, is it a certain amount of time that they would work with you?
Yes, I mean, I tend to talk to people and see what works for them as far as the timeline, but and there are one-off sessions, just a human design or astrology session, just a
Mm-hmm.
consultation. But to work longer with me, it would look like probably about 16 weeks, and
Okay.
um yes.
That's
So
cool. And I see that you're also doing some workshops and different things locally. Um, is it all in-person things that you're doing in that regard right now?
It's actually all been virtual, even though I did do
Oh,
something for a local group. It was their first virtual event. So
okay. Maybe that's what I saw. Okay.
yes, but I have been, yes, putting on these introduction to human design type of master classes for people. And it's really great because usually what people tell me when I bring up human design is they say, "Oh, I've never heard of that. What is that?" Or they might say, "I just heard about that last month. What is it?"
Mm-hmm.
And I really feel that it's just going to become more well known because there are so many practical applications for it.
Yeah, that's great. So people can work with you one-on-one. They
Yes.
can do maybe a one-off reading if that's something they're interested in, or they can check out your workshops that are virtual as you're having them. Where is the best place to find all of this information?
Well, people can go to my website and it's manyworldsmanypossibilities.com. That's the name of my company. And I've created a free guide to help people basically 3 ways that human design can help you manifest a career you love. And so that's also something else that people can sign up for.
Oh, that's really cool. I like it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, well, this has been really fun. I've enjoyed our conversation. Is there anything that you want to say that I didn't ask you today?
No, this has been really amazing, and I love the questions that you asked as well. Just like with our first interview, you asked really great questions, and I think this has hopefully been a really down to earth type of introduction to human design for people. And there's so much more. There's so many more really amazing layers to it. So I would say if you're at all interested, then yeah, definitely start diving into it, and I'd be happy to work with you as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Marla.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ashley. This has been great.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Made of Dreams. If you're enjoying the show, please consider subscribing and leaving a 5-star rating and review. It really does help. If you'd like to learn more about me or the guests on the show, head on over to madeofdreamspodcast.com. And while you're there, sign up for the Dreamer's Digest and you will receive my Creative State worksheet. It's a list of my favorite tips and tricks to get you in a creative mindset. And I'm going to leave you with a couple snippets of the Magnolia Jane's new album. In the meantime, dream on.
You can't slow it down, so look around and drink in every moment. They'll be gone before you know it. You can't see it now, but the years fly by. Nothing moves faster than the speed of light. We can turn it around and say goodbye.